Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the second episode of the LinkedIn live series we call AI Meets Climate Thought Leadership. This session is designed to bring you esteemed guests from the global climate, engineering, infrastructure, investment, and city planning industries. All of them are going to join us to talk about their achievements and the overall mission when it comes to AI and climate specifically. I'm Jay Sadiq, the founder and the CEO of FortyGuard, and we will be moderating this session today. And I'll try my best to have an engaging conversation with our guests, our amazing guests that I'm really proud to have today, alongside taking all of your questions of any of the audience is having one. That said, let's lay out what this session will look like before I introduce our guests for today. Our focus today is on climate tech and investment, specifically tailored to our audience in the UAE. This session will run for an hour, of which the first 45 minutes are allocated for the main discussion, followed by a Q&A session for another 15 minutes. Please type your questions in the comments section on LinkedIn, and we will do our best to answer as many of them as we can in today with our guests. Let's briefly introduce our distinguished guest now. Super proud to introduce my fellow colleague Abdulaziz Redha. He is the CEO and co-founder of HyveGeo, aiming to remove 1 gigaton of CO2 by 2040. He has a background in business, engineering, and sustainability, and he has been a leader in bridging reach with practical solutions in the circular economy. My other guest that I'm also very proud to present and also a fellow colleague, Onur Elgün, is the co-founder and the CEO of CarbonSifr, a climate tech startup using AI to help businesses and their customers measure and reduce their carbon footprints. With a very strong background in strategy and market expansion, Onur is dedicated to making climate action accessible to all. It's a pleasure to see you all here, and thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks a lot, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Jay.
So let's kick in with the questions. Let's start with hearing about your experiences. Abdulaziz, I'd love to start with you, brother. Could you tell us about HyveGeo and your mission to remove the 1 gigaton of CO2 by 2030?
Absolutely. So at HyveGeo, we're on a mission to gigaton scale removal. And I think a very important part of this is to tell you a little bit of the backstory and how this all started. So I met my co-founders at the University of Cambridge when we I was deciding I wanted to go do a PhD. Soon I realized it's actually quicker to just go and implement what we're trying to do. And my co-founder, Sam, I remember him calling. We always wanted to have something impactful and do something with a lot of impact. So we taught a couple of courses on sustainability, the circular economy. We did consulting. And we always thought, what can we do that can have lasting impact on multiple generations? What can we do that's so big and so impactful in the world today? And what do we need today? And carbon removal has always been part of the discussion. And I still remember Sam calling me at 2 a.m. in the morning and telling me, I found it. Let's go and grow microalgae. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, this is 2 a.m. in the morning. So I'm pretty sure he was watching a YouTube video and the idea came to him. And that kept me up all night. And I started looking into it. Fast forward a few years now where we are today and how we are on a mission, basically removing carbon dioxide, but also greening the deserts. We found that solution where we can have co-benefits and a solution to green our deserts and to use this large asset that we have, 230 million square kilometers around the world of desert land, and we can use as a solution, not just for climate change or climate action, but also for food security. And we do this using microalgae and biochar. So we take wasted resources such as agricultural waste, the sunlight, the sunshine that we have, wastewater, and convert it to tools that we can use for food security and a cleaner climate, but also cleaner food. And through greening the desert, hopefully as well, changing the microclimate. So that's the mission we're on, and the mission that we started a few years back, all with that 2 a.m. call, and that led me to my co-founders as well, my other co-founders, who are an amazing part of the team, and basically everyone who believes in that same mission.
Well, that's very beautiful, brother. And maybe the insight here is don't miss a 2 a.m. call if you receive one from your co-founder.
Absolutely not. I never do.
So thank you for sharing that, Abdulaziz. Onur, I know you and I shared the stage at the Global Chief Sustainability Forum lately that was hosted by the Department of Energy, ADNOC, New York Stock Exchange, and ICE. And I was really honestly inspired as being one of the audience as well to learn about what CarbonSifr is doing. But I'd love to share the same story with our audience. And specifically, I'd like to ask you if you could share with us the vision behind CarbonSifr and how your AI-enabled technology is supporting climate action.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. Likewise, I think my journey. I mean, I was getting 2 a.m. calls like Abdulaziz, but they were mainly from clients, so I had to pick them up. Back in my days, BCG, and that was my life for 10 years, let's say, and then I moved into Talabat, and actually this is where I started getting exposed to tech world. And this is where actually, I mean, CarbonSifr is in a way a combination of those both worlds in my mind. Also reflects our founding team. We have Mustafa, who's from BCG, and we have Yildirim, who was like me from Talabat recently. So that was kind of, I married in a way the philosophy of both companies. One is mainly like going deeper into the root cause of a problem and solving the pressing issues of businesses. On the other side, the other part of the world, it was more about making things very convenient and accessible for the mass audience. So that was honestly the foundational building blocks of CarbonSifr, because I always got exposed to this climate topic. And I always say I wasn't lucky enough to born in Helsinki or Oslo, where in kindergarten level you start to know about even climate change today. But the thing is, in the region, I saw there is a huge intention to take action. I saw it from the SMEs reaching out to us on solutions. Back in the days in Talabat for sustainable solutions from packaging, etc. I saw the intention of people on giving back to society through donations, etc. Consumer push, and I saw how big companies want to do something meaningful, but the challenge is they are struggling to make it part of their core business in a very convenient and easy way. So that was a little bit of a pieces of Lego, bringing everything together, helped me to basically structure the foundational philosophy of CarbonSifr. This is why we build it. And today, I mean, we know that our region, for a fact, gets warmer twice as fast as bare minimum compared to the rest of the world. Like just going back to 50 years ago, UAE median temperature raised more than 2 degrees. And this is just 50 years, yani, from the foundation from the union of the UAE, right? So things are moving fast in the wrong direction. And I felt like this topic is being tackled at the ivory tower of the world, not on this part of the global south. And seeing the intention here, our vision is literally to bridge the gap between intention and action when it comes to climate action. And we believe businesses play a crucial role for four main reasons. I would say one is they are significant contributors to emissions, which is a huge opportunity to reduce the emissions. So this is the right way to start in our philosophy. They have complex supply chains today. If you go to a mid-size, even a UAE company, they have more than 1,000 suppliers. Which can have ripple effects. So if you solve the problem for the company, then you can cascade it down to their supply chain. So you have a magnifying impact on emission reduction. They shape consumer behavior, hashtag marketing budgets, and of course our due to the reflexes and the muscles of the governments we have in the Gulf. They are very much interacted with the businesses and the government, so they have huge influence on policymaking. So this is why we started with focusing on the problem through businesses and helping them making climate action very convenient and actionable. So this is kind of the philosophy behind CarbonSifr.
Yeah, and this is something that probably resonates with me. I studied in public schools here in the UAE, and I think Abdulaziz can also echo that. Sustainability was something that we had a sense of direction for. Like we all understood, the founders of the country as well had this in mind, like that we want to make a lot of farming and greening, and they wanted to plant more trees and to basically build a sustainable future of the country. But I always say from a tech perspective, and I totally agree with you, we came late, but we're taking the lead. And I think we're taking the lead because of you guys, right? We're building climate tech solutions that I think will change not only the landscape in the UAE or in the GCC, but also in the world. Let's talk a little bit about the intersection of climate tech and AI. And Abdulaziz, I'd like to also address this question to you. How is HyveGeo leveraging AI to achieve its sustainability goals?
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic question, Jay. And also just to note on what Onur and you just said, yes, even though we were taught at a young age about sustainability and so on, and the world is catching up and we are catching up with tech, there are usually what we call the rules of the game, things that need to change. And these rules of the game that need to change are, you're looking at technological shift, and I'll talk about AI in a bit. You're looking at regulatory shifts, market shifts, but also consumer and mindset shifts as well. And these have to change from the core, so then we can start adopting solutions in order to have more impact, in order to change. So with technological shifts at HyveGeo, obviously, and what we've seen from a scientific and engineering perspective, we are able now to look into bringing together that intersection of science, engineering, but also the digital side. So HyveGeo, we're an infrastructure-heavy business. We use a lot of heavy machinery and infrastructure, so pyrolyzers, biorefineries for the microalgae. But data is very important to us, and how data plays an important role, especially with our plans for scalability and gigaton scale removal, is how do we do what we're doing in the UAE around the world. Now, there's a lot of data that we collect today, data such as soil type, temperature, GIS data. We're looking at weather data, so historical weather data, but also if we're looking into agriculture and farming. So our output from what we produce is a mixture of biochar and then biofertilizer and biostimulants that when we stick them together, we can put them in desert sand and we can green the desert, literally with that. We can start growing farmland and reclaiming the desert to develop farmland or forestry. So we need to understand what crops are we growing, what waste streams do we have, what's the season. And now if you take all of this data together and try to do something a bit like it's akin to health sciences when they do drug discovery. We call it formula discovery. I want to now use AI and take all of this data from around the world to help me accelerate the formula for that part of the world. I'll give you an example. I'm collecting all this data today, anyways, because I need to do it for the formula of the UAE and the Gulf. Let's say, for example, tomorrow we start expanding our operations and going somewhere far away, Australia. I don't know how the soil is like in Australia or the weather conditions or the crop type that they need. But if I have all this data and I can put it in, I can discover the formula much quicker and produce that product that I can stick in the Australian desert, for example. And then we can start producing farmland much quicker and scale it and get to that climate action and get to that gigaton scale removal much quicker. And we are doing this because AI has enabled us to do this, because of those technological shifts have enabled us to do this as well. And that comes with the intersection of all the engineering and science, even though that was done 25 years ago. But AI enables us to move much faster at a larger, at a faster rate to achieve that gigaton scale that we're looking for.
That's beautiful, man. It's a wonderful use case when it comes to the intersection of climate and AI, and I'm always fascinated about what you guys are building. But it gives me a lot of thoughts and ideas, but I love the application of it as well, and how you guys are now also trying to leverage AI in a way that can bring a lot of expansion to the technology that you have in different geographies. Honor, back to you, and this is probably as well more related to our ecosystem here in the UAE. What strategies does CarbonSifr employ to engage businesses and individuals in the UAE in climate action altogether?
Yeah, a very, very good question. That's almost the essence of any startup, right? But what's the hook? What's the catch? I think maybe I step back and maybe I tell a little bit about a climate action journey, a very standard climate action journey from a business perspective. Then I'll reflect it on a customer perspective. So the ABC of climate action is first measurement. So it's simple principle, you can only control what you measure. So if you today look at companies that are willing to do something, the right way to do is the very first step to do is based on your emissions. Where do I stand today? This is my supply chain. These are my customers. These are my utilities. These are my physical locations. Even if they are a pure play software company, software always ends with capex. There's a data center that you need cement to build, so there is no software and a software world. So software always, if you go deeper, you end up with the cement, meaning the carbonization is everywhere, which is very normal. It's the essence of life. So the first step is, regardless of the business you are in, the way you work, the business model you have, is to understand, where do I stand today? What's my emission? And in that emission, it's not a maybe random number. It's more of the so what of it. So what is like, okay, I know my emissions, and okay, but who are the contributors? Is it the HQ I have? Is it the data centers I have? Are those the 5 suppliers that I'm always working with? So basically taking an X-ray of your business and identifying ways to start. So I think for us, one catch is, look, we will help you to get started very quickly. And this is actually where AI plays a huge role, because the classic model today is, which has been happening maybe 80% of the world that are measuring emissions. You deal with a lot of templates. So you have your templates. There are people in charge of those templates. There are people in charge of filling in those templates. And there are people in charge of quality checking those templates. where all the numbers go in. This is step one. Then step two is you get the X-ray, you have a baseline emission, amazing. It already take 2 months, 6 months to build it. And of course, you need to repeat it because you need to see. So you have another 6 months. So the repetition becomes a huge problem. People change, business model changes, locations change. So there's lots of complications. The last step is basically converting that data into action. This is the second catch we have. So first is more or less like you can get started today because no templates needed. AI helps us to map the data to the X-ray, to the, let's say, carbon accounting clusters. The second step is the so what part. Like giving a business today, businesses are not taking action on climate because they don't have a carbon calculator. I mean, this cannot be that simple, you know? So it's not a carbon calculation problem. It's more about so what of the calculation. The problem is the so what. So this is actually where we heavily focus on. You need calculation to get started, but this is less than 20% of the problem, to be very honest. Even if today you give carbon calculators to everyone, I don't think much will change. Great in terms of awareness, but in terms of results, I'm not sure. So what happens is, the second part is we help them thanks to AI based on the data we got, because if a business has 100 suppliers, each supplier brings easily up to 3,000 data points, all the way from the SKUs they sell to the business, all the way to the employees they engage with. So you end up with 300,000 data points per supplier. All this data come together in a meaningful way, and then you provide reduction recommendation in a very actionable level, not at the level of how about you put solar panels on your warehouse. I mean, if the person already has a warehouse to run his business, he's definitely a lot smarter than anybody and would already think about those solar panels. But the key thing is the AI helps us provide SKU level, line level, because businesses are run on line item level, good businesses. So how deep we can go on a recommendation and say, hey, Jay, this is the item you consume a lot or your consumers love a lot, and this is a huge opportunity for you to reduce. So this is where AI plays and comes in and recommends you reduction recommendations. And the rest is honestly where, unfortunately, most of the world is focusing, reporting. Whereas in our region, luckily in my view, it's more about communication, which is even better. So how you engage your customers on the so what part. Right? So this is actually where we also come in and play a role. If a business is a B2C, we help them engage their customers with the results and achievements they have on a day-to-day basis. So in a nutshell, that's the 3 catch points, I would say, how they start, what, and engagement, ROI impact on the business.
I love it, man. I think I enjoyed the most the first part. You said what gets measured gets improved, right? And usually all the best solutions, they really come from the understanding of data. So having a baseline of understanding is usually a very good drive, even for the customers themselves, not only the solution providers, to know where are they standing and then what can be done. Is it too bad? Is it good? Is it something that they could do to improve? And totally agree with that. Actually, it reminds me, and I do want to share this with the audience, that we work with CarbonSifr. And the very first thing that we did is basically looking at the data so we can truly understand how our clients could benefit from all of those amazing technologies. So I'd love to move to the last part here, discussing probably something where we could express our ideas about different things. And perhaps also before we move to the audience and take a lot of questions, I wanted to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Abdulaziz. I'd love to learn from your perspective. And I always love your perspective, so I'm very excited for the answer. Where do you see the biggest challenge or the greatest opportunity when it comes to the field of climate technology today?
That's another fantastic question, Jay. And it's one of the things that we've been when I was teaching as well at Cambridge. One of the things that we always tell people to look out for, especially with executives. So we talked about the rules of the game and the shifts that you have. The biggest challenge today is that mindset shift. How do you change everyone's mindset towards a more sustainable future, towards a more that we actually need? So we spend the last decade, I'll give you an example. We spend the last decade convincing people that carbon removal has to happen. We need to remove carbon dioxide. We need to remove 10 gigatons of carbon dioxide by 2050 if we want to remain within that 1.5 degree of the IPCC. And the world got convinced. And then you have all the COPs that came in Article 6, and recently now what we have as well in the UAE as COP 28. So that mindset has to shift where people are convinced, and you'll be shocked. I still meet people who say, I don't believe in carbon and carbon removal. I'm like, okay. So thank God there are companies like ours, and we need more who actually do, and we need this because the science proves it, and it's all science backed, and not just backed by business, but even from a business perspective, it makes sense. So how do you change the mindsets of people? How do you educate individuals, businesses, again, governmental leadership around the world that this needs to happen? Climate change is real. It's happening today. We can see it. We probably see it more in the UAE and get to experience it more in the UAE because we're in an area that really gets affected by it. That the reason why we're doing what we're doing, the HyveGeo, greening the desert, is did you know in the UAE we import 80 to 90% of our food? So we have no arable land and we import 80 to 90% of our food. And that is why as well, because of all the desert around us, it makes our region very hot. So if we were able to green the desert, produce food, and at the same time do this at a large scale, we could change the microclimate. We could cool our environment a little bit as well. But also at the same time, change people's perspectives and mindset. So that is the main challenge we see today. Now, the main opportunity is on an individual level, is people actually embracing this and basically equipping themselves with the skills needed towards that transition. I always like to think of it like the internet in the late 80s, early 90s, where people, had to learn how to use the internet, learn how to use an email, get online, search. We had multiple search engines and so on, and they needed to develop those skills. And we probably all from the generation where we all had to go through ICDL in school, right? Which is the UN program. And we all had to learn these skills to come, to the internet world and start using the computer today. Well, if you look at our kids, you probably give them a screen and they're 3 or 4 years old and they know exactly what to do with it. It's just second nature, but we had to learn. We are in the same stage today with sustainability, with climate change. There will be investments that need to be made, but that will make sure that we are sustainable in the long run. And that is a massive opportunity for everyone, not just for engineers or scientists, but if you're a lawyer, you need to understand what climate change, carbon removal, what sustainability is, because you can implement that. Same if you're an accountant, you're looking at sustainable financing, or you're looking at carbon accounting, for example. And it's the same if you are, say, a purchaser and you're looking at your supply chain, which is something that Onur just mentioned. My investors or my suppliers or even my buyers, my clientele are asking of me to be more sustainable. So I need to start looking at my scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. I need to start looking at my supply chain. How do I green my supply chain? If I'm a large company, I have power to tell my supply chain to be more green. Or I could start implementing things like reverse logistics if I'm a logistician. So all these skills, these are all opportunities that we can start picking up. And it's just part of that first thing that we have to change, which is a mindset shift. Once you overcome that, you start realizing there are opportunities on an individual level, but also on a business level. If you're in the carbon removal business, carbon removal is a $1 trillion industry that is masked as an existential crisis. If we have to remove 10 gigatons of carbon dioxide by 2050 onwards every single year, you're selling those carbon credits at $100 a ton. That is a $1 trillion industry, and we need more players in this industry to come in and start to actively remove carbon dioxide. But then we also need more players like FortyGuard, like CarbonSifr, that also come in. There is no silver bullet. We always say that. You need multiple companies coming in with different offerings, so that we can mitigate a climate crisis in the future. And as we always like to say at HyveGeo, you have to plant the seeds today so your descendants can sit in the shade.
This is very beautiful, brother. This is like poetry to me, to be honest. A wonderful answer. And you've actually came across a lot of different things which are really practical, but also in the sense of how, even from a cultural perspective, we need to learn things. And we can see that there is a lot of things that are about to happen. So we're actually planting seeds like HyveGeo is doing, but we're probably going to see the fruits coming out very soon, thanks to your work and your dedication as well. Onur, I'm super excited to hear from you as well about the challenges and the opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, challenge is an easy one for any entrepreneur. We can quickly come up with many challenges. Honestly, to me, fundamentally, one major challenge in that space, also reflecting on Abdulaziz's points, this awareness, and I think awareness not even at a consumer level, but even in the wider ecosystem, which covers also investment vehicles. Right? Today, if we zoom out and look at where the money goes into in the climate space, there is actually huge mismatch. It's for those of us who took economics class, we say people think rationally, right? That's the basic assumption of microeconomics. People think rationally. Then, all the P and Q, price, quantity, all the basics of economics start with assuming people think rationally. I think if we zoom out and look where the money is flowing into, in which problem within climate space, there's a huge mismatch. I see this as one of the major challenges because often people talk about, hey, there needs to be more investment going into the space. But I think we are going beyond that globally. Now, I think the energy should go on where this investment is going into. Because one example is for the food ecosystem, the food production, agriculture, and the supply chain is almost a quarter of the global emissions. Whereas when you look at where the money goes into on food-related climate tech initiatives, the supply chains, it's only 8%. So you have 25% of the emissions, which is part of day-to-day life for everyone. And the funding globally is at 8%. Similarly on industrials, right? In industrial sector, it's about 1/3 of the global emissions. But if you look where the money goes in climate innovation, it's about 15%. 35% of emission, 15% of the funding. I think we are all learning, founders, investors, governments, policymakers, but I still see this the pace of learning, the steepness of the learning is a big challenge in the very near, because we don't have much time left. In terms of opportunity, I don't want to sound really like too cliche, but there is a very good reason why I really founded CarbonSifr in this part of the world. There's a very obvious reason. You cannot alienate climate action from policymaking. That's one of those industries. And I think seeing pre-COP, during COP, post-COP, what's happening here in the UAE, and even in our wider region, is very encouraging. So I see it, the government collaboration, be it in the form of incentive, in policy making, even in hard, let's say, incentives, land provision, etc. I see our region in a very pragmatic position, and I see it as a biggest opportunity. I think the region can really leapfrog, not only on tech but also on policy making, to pave the way for startups like us on the climate space.
That's a very interesting look at the situation overall. Onur, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I think that was also very useful. I'd like to be mindful of the time that we have, and I know the audience must be eager to ask their questions. So let me move to the Q&A now, if that's possible. We'll start to take some questions probably from the comments. So they will pop up on the screen now, and we will be able to answer them. Nice. So we have a question here from Muiz. On what specific areas of climate tech do you think we require more collaboration between startups? That's an interesting one, since now you have 3 startups on the call. How much synergy do you see with local climate tech startups coming together? This is a very good question. I don't know who wants to take it, but maybe Abdulaziz, you want to go first with this one.
That's actually a good one. One of the things that you could work with collaboration with startups, and I'll talk to you from my perspective, where it's startups along with governments or larger companies or state-owned companies, for example. As a startup, we have the ability to move very fast. We have the ability to maneuver much quicker because we do not have any of the bureaucracy or the red tape. So the decision making is quick. We could advance technology, we could advance science really quickly because of decision making when it comes to R&D, to engineering, to science, but also when it comes to, say, decisions on trying a new product or purchasing a new piece of equipment. When you see with larger organizations, that could take a while, that could take months to get done. So I think in terms of collaboration, it's great to see more collaboration between larger companies if they to move towards piloting more with startups or teaming up with startups for that faster impact and decision making while they make their decisions to see it as well. In the end, there's a lot of investment that's needed, and you have to justify that investment. But basically, it doesn't escape me. The larger companies, especially if they are, if they have to report back to their shareholders, they need to justify that long-term investment into transitioning their business towards a more sustainable business or towards a more cleaner business. They basically have to make a decision. Do I want to be the Blockbuster of the world? Do I want to be the Kodak of the world? Or do I want to be, say, for example, Netflix and keep going and adopt new technologies and go on? And working with startups gives them that chance to do it very quickly, to limit that investment to see how it works, so they don't have to have a heavy investment. But also when it works and when they see it works, they could start scaling it up quickly because they have the ability to scale that as well. So that's my 2 cents on it, on how potentially corporations or companies or governments can start working with startups.
Nice, man. So your perspective looking at this is that you can bring startups together by engaging them with a larger umbrella, which is them operating business with larger corporates. And in that sense, you can get a lot of companies to get together and develop something that is unique. Since you mentioned R&D is for them something they can move quickly with making decisions for, and then they can probably just get together and solve for problems that those large corporations that are taking lead in the market basically are offering an opportunity for a real situation out there, and then they can go and practice a solution for them in that collaborative sense. Onur, what do you think about that?
It really makes a lot of sense, because in the context of a large company, because imagine any large company, any startup, there is no way you're going to be able to cover the whole value chain for that specific problem as a startup. I mean,
Nice.
best case, you will, I mean, all the effort you will put in place is to carve out a POC, right? Early days of a startup, engaging with a large corp. So you want to make sure, hey, let me get this meaningful piece of work where I can showcase my tech solution, create an impact, and then we take it from there, right? I think with to me, I was just gonna have this value chain approach. I think the biggest collaboration lies where you actually at the very early stage direct complementing across value chain. So A, B, C, D, like everyone takes one piece, A, B, C, D. Literally, you cover the whole value chain. Then it's gonna be more impactful, more meaningful, remove a lot of friction, also all the red tape or friction between navigating the governance. So, but I agree that can work governed well under a big company umbrella. That makes a lot of sense. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach about it. And I think this is an approach that also, since we're all Hub 71 here, this is an approach that Hub 71 really tries to bring when it comes to market access, working with, large corporations. They bring a lot of startups, but they sometimes unify those efforts to solve for one problem across the value chain. So each startup is specialized in something, but collectively they all get to a destination that this large corporation is in need for. So everything is like really well defined. Everyone understands what are their responsibilities into this value chain and how they can contribute, but also measure their contribution, right? A lot of those POCs, they might come with, early traction and validation and maybe as well some money, but also you need the experience. You need to really understand how can I service the market in the best way possible, and what am I really good at. And I think that that collective exercises process really brings startups together to understand what they're good at and what they could master going forward. I think I'd love to take another question here, so maybe the producers could share one with us. Nice. So JD is asking, how can one overcome the challenge of changing mindsets? Do you have a successful story of change? I'm curious to know the factor that converted the persons or the person. That's an interesting question. I'll leave it to you guys to decide who wants to take it.
Yeah, there are multiple stories on
Nice.
changing mindsets, and basically, so one of the stories that I really like, and it comes down to communication. So the essence of this always comes back to communication. The leadership team, the CEO, always has to communicate to their shareholders and to the rest of the stakeholders that change is happening and we need to do it. One of my favorite stories, and it's not only a change of mindset, but also using technological shifts, is the story of the Danish National Oil Company, which has been renamed to Ørsted. So the Danish National Oil Company in the early 2000s or late 2000s decided that they want to decarbonize what they're doing and move towards renewable energy. And they had a target that by the by towards the end of 2019 or so on, that they will have a certain number of their revenues coming from renewable energy. Little did they know that the CEO then decided, well, and the whole leadership team, is to communicate the change and to move towards a complete strategic shift and to rename the company. And they renamed it as Ørsted. And Ørsted today is one of the largest offshore wind turbine producers. So not only did they hit their target early, but they converted the company 100% and not just part of it. Now, Onur, early on, you said something very interesting, that the Scandinavians or the Nordics or people in Europe are very well aware of this. We always like to say that Europe is kind of leading the world on circularity and forcing companies to do it. The Netherlands and Scandinavia are leading Europe as well when it comes to that.
My wife is also watching Abdulaziz. She's from Netherlands, so
Brilliant. So we always see technologies coming from there and regulation. So this company really this is an example of a company saying we will do this and change the mindset because we need to move towards this, and they rode the wave very, very early on. It's that vision. The leadership team saw a vision. They rode the wave early. They communicated. Communication is very, very important here. Communication is key. And we can see multiple examples of lack of communication and the CEOs being ousted or they couldn't maintain by, especially in publicly traded companies. Another way as well, since we're talking about change, is actually a top-down approach, regulatory change. So look, for example, how the EU decided, but it listened to people's, again, shifting mindset. And you're looking mainly at younger millennials and Gen Z. I'm not accusing anyone here, by the way, but they are asking to be more sustainable. And the latest change from the EU, forcing a large company like Apple to change their chargers into a USB-C charger. So all the new iPhones are no longer the Lightning charger, but it's a USB-C charger, so it can maintain that and to have access to Europe, the largest market. So Apple had to change all of that. So these are some of the changes that could come in by whether changing mindset from the top down, or it could be from the bottom up, where your customers are asking for it. Because Gen Z, younger millennials are very aware and of the sustainability and the products that they're buying, and they're voting with their wallets. So they're actually changing our mindsets, or changing, CEOs or companies' mindsets with their wallets, and that's how they're voting, saying, "I will not buy from you if you're not sustainable." I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think that's an interesting look from all perspective at the way that you could change mindsets and basically communication as well. Whether it's by enforcing something or by leading the change through a generational shift as well, that we're witnessing in a lot of industries and businesses, not only necessarily in sustainability, but it really changes a lot of the things that are happening today. Onur, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I will maybe share a different story from a completely different perspective, a client story from Dubai, even specifically from Design District, a major restaurant chain. So we started the conversation, as Abdulaziz said in the last sentence, when we said, "Hey, we are CarbonSifr. We help businesses measure, reduce their emissions, and look, and you are a B2C business also, we can also help you engage your customers for the cause," because their branding was very much aligned with the impact we can deliver to them. So the owner, very successful business, the owner was, look, his starting sentence was, "Oh, I don't know, but my customers are asking about it." Like, really, that was the starting sentence, as Abdulaziz highlighted. So, and then this, there are layers, and maybe not everyone is fully aware. So, different levels of emission, carbon accounting, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, GHG protocol. We told him, of course, we are a startup. We don't want to create a lot of, we want to minimize frictions, right? It's your early client. We said, look, we will start slow, only scope 1 and 2 emissions, which is basically your direct energy consumption and your purchased energy, etc. We start with that. Like, okay, fine. The moment we showed him that his restaurant, the chain, the energy consumption is significantly higher than many other restaurants in that area who works with us. Of course, we sanitize the names and stuff, but it's kind of a benchmarking analysis to say someone like you at your size, they consume 20% less energy. I mean, hence your bills than you. Look, this is we leave this with you. And these are the few things that could be the reason. You know what he told us? Like, on the spot, he saw it. And even I challenged our team 2-3 times before I bring this data to him. I told him, guys, look, is it really 20%? It's big, yani. You do the math, it's a lot of money. Let's make sure, it runs really correctly, the engine. And then I bring it to him. He told me, "Oh, yes, that should be true." He said 2 weeks ago, someone came dine in. He told me, "Look, I'm in charge of. I run a company. who does isolation, AC, and I can really help you because, man, you really have a poor isolation. And he was like, man, just have your dinner and go. Don't try to pitch me a 200,000 dirham contract, right? So he said, look, man, I treated him so badly, and now I see the numbers. So all I want to say is that guy was right, right? But maybe he didn't speak with numbers because maybe he didn't have it. So I think the one way to convince is communication, yes, back with data. The moment he saw the data, on the spot he was convinced, like no questions asked. I think that's a big way of helping people join the climate action train. Let me put it that way: communication with data.
I totally agree with you, brother. I think it reminds me of the early days in FortyGuard when one of my advisors, he said, data is a universal language. Everyone understands it. So you don't need to work hard on convincing people because you're not putting the right words in place. Just use the right narrative, and that's data. Just put the data in front of them, and that might change a lot of minds. I really love this. Look, I'm enjoying this. It's supposed to be for 45 minutes. But I'm gonna take one last question because I love listening to you guys. So maybe if the producer can do that. Cool. So Mudathir is asking a question. How do culture attitudes towards sustainability in the UAE impact your work? And what strategies have you found effective in engaging local communities? So maybe we touched a little bit on some of the parts of this answer or of this question, but maybe we could take some short answers from you, Abdulaziz, and then Onur, if that's possible.
Sure. I think the UAE is unique, and the UAE is very, very interesting. The UAE has an interesting culture because it's home to 200 nationalities. The UAE witnessed uh, a sharp increase in growth over the past 2 decades. So there's growth, it comes down and grow again, and we're seeing even more growth. Now, the UAE, I remember from the 80s and 90s, is very different than the UAE today. We were always growing up knowing that we had a target for reducing our waste. If anyone in the UAE remembers from the early days, target 555 on the reduce, reuse, recycle, and 555 kilos per person or per household. If I don't remember in the 90s, but there was always a culture of sustainability, and I think that stems as well. And we're trying to get that into schools now, and for the younger generations, and for everyone living there. And that, I think, stems from where we come from. We realize where we come from. We come from the desert, which is our greatest asset, and it's our natural resource and our natural asset. It comes from looking after the place we live in. It comes after keeping our waters clean, because we always counted on that for our livelihood, for fishing, and for our livelihood that comes from it, but also from the scarce water that we have in the desert, or the oases that we have, for example, in Al-Ain. Sheikh Zayed, the late Sheikh Zayed, said that he encourages everyone to plant trees and to farm, and those who cannot do it, the government will do it on their behalf if they really want to do it. So there's always that ability for farming, for sustainability, for looking after our environment, and moving towards that. So I think those cultural attitudes have always been embedded in us. And as the UAE grows, we need that continuous education for everyone, where we could create that culture, and it just that transcends borders and transcends our own personal cultures, and looking into how can we be more sustainable, how can we be good stewards of this land and of the earth in general.
Amazing. Love it, man. That was a wonderful statement, let's say. Honor, what's your take on
Yeah,
this?
I'll focus maybe more on the customer engagement part of what we do to answer this question. Look, I moved to UAE more than 15 years ago. And this is, literally where I got married, had kids, like almost like all my life, post education. Let's say the heavy meaningful part is here, building the CarbonSifr here. I'm telling this because even I was wrong when I was having assumptions about conversion rates per per, let's say, UAE resident segments, right? UAE is a great mix. This is where I want to pick up from what Abdulaziz said. So even after spending 15 years in and out, building your life here, building your company here, you still may miss certain things that's inherited, that's deep inside of people who are part of this country. I'll be more specific. On the contrary to very common, I would say, global north belief, people at the individual consumer level, people who take the climate action the most, based on the data we have, when they dine in, when they take a ride, when they order their food, I can say the leading groups are locals. Like I can, our numbers in Abu Dhabi in local heavy areas are like literally sets the benchmark. That's number one. Number two, I would say expectedly young generation who are becoming part of labor market. They are really different, man. Like they are really different, and it's a completely different mindset. And you don't need too much to convince them to take action, to hold accountable. And then, of course, the third is specific to the question. I would say more on the working expat population. Like I would say professionals that are really on the forefront of this. But if I sum it up, this is basically 70-80% of UAE, right? This is 70-80%. This segment in those three segments are the majority of our population in the region. More than half is less than 30 years old. Huge local population in the wider Gulf, and very like highly skilled professionals, expats, right? And these are already today driving climate action at an individual basis. And I think UAE is a great breeding place to engage individuals for climate action.
Nice. Thank you guys for all the amazing insights. We're literally marking the hour now. So we've had a very enriching discussion today. And I'd like to thank Abdulaziz and Onur for their valuable insights. I personally learned a lot from you guys, and I always appreciate having even side conversations, but also now obviously learning a lot from your experience and how climate tech and AI is embedded into your businesses, what challenges you've been having, and what opportunities do you see in this market. And I also want to thank the audience for joining us on this engaging session, but also their engaging questions. There are many other questions probably that we could not answer, and I truly apologize for not having the time to do so, but perhaps the panelists will be able to take those comments on the LinkedIn live session that we have, and they'll answer all of those. And please feel free to reach out to both of them. They're two amazing, enabling people. They've supported a lot of startup founders and the ecosystem, and they're happy to share anything in terms of like their insights and anything that probably we could do with them. So stay tuned for more sessions in our AI Meet Climate Thought Leadership series. Until next time, thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Abdulaziz.
Thanks, Jay. It's been fun. Thanks, Onur.
Thank you so much, guys.